Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows Cabs2. So you might wonder, what is this thing supposed to be about? Well, it started with the plugin PointyGuitar, and it is the means by which I can take PointyGuitar. That's not actually PointyGuitar, that's a real guitar amp. But if it wasn't, I could still make it seem like a smaller speaker, because Cabs2 is like an extension off of the cab simulation in PointyGuitar. So the deal with that is it's not really cab simulation. What it really is essentially a bandpass filter comprising a low pass and a high pass that work in a particular way. Like here, I'll throw some drums on. And as you might expect, you can do a low pass. Right down to sort of deep subsonic frequencies. Or you can do a high pass up to high supersonic frequencies. It's a pretty good high pass and a pretty good low pass each way, with an exception, which is this is not a well-behaved filter. This filter is all weird and smeary around the frequency limits. It basically is messy around the cutoff. Now, it's not in such a way that, like if you have a really steep cutoff with a well-behaved filter, like a biquad filter, it might start sounding kind of resonant. This doesn't end up sounding as resonant, but it will still go as steep. It just does it in an interesting way. It does it by basically screwing up the phase response around where it's cutting off. So you can do, say, a guitar sound. And we can roll off highs. And that kind of sounds like there's even another speaker involved rather than just the one. You can continue to roll off highs that way. Like a speaker, it has to have really good rejection beyond the cutoff frequency, but unlike most filters, making it go that steep doesn't give you as much of a sense of resonance. And that's because it's this weird, smeary, high-frequency screwing up filter. And you can put it back. Or do high pass. And that's made a very mid-rangey guitar with pretty much the same feel that the original guitar had. And now I can switch it in and out, and you can hear what happens to sort of the lows and highs as they get manipulated by this filter with this sort of speakery quality to it. You can do a neat thing where it's kind of like old Foo Fighters albums done with that weird little amplifier with a tiny speaker and a very small enclosure, preventing it from doing extremely deep low frequency sounds. Or you can do that with it, which is like making it be a pig nose. We can also do this, of course, on full band.
They all join their hands and they set up a chant. And Discord ooze right through the screen like horror from Japan. And they thank Discord.
Even to the point where it's kind of transistor radio-y.
So glad you're here.
crossover for even steeper, more aggressive effects. And we can switch over to a electric piano sound. Honestly, I should be padding this a little bit. No low frequencies, to low frequencies. Back to the normal sound. Back to the filtered sound. There you have it. Oh, I almost forgot here. Let me take a minute and do drum sounds. I think I did a little bit of that before. This is a good example for being able to show how it can take out highs, because these are some of my drum recordings where it has way too much really large right cymbal, so it overwhelms everything. But we can soften that up more than a little bit, and you still hear the snare there. And we can take out even the snare as well, or there's not much deep lows in here, but we can reshape it using the high pass. And so here we have a drum sound, which starting out like this. We're trapping in both extremes a little bit. In a way that might just be useful. So that's the thing. This is the high pass, low pass combination that might very well, in fact it will, but I might go beyond there, replace the high pass and low pass in Console X for my upcoming Console X2 plugin. Because that's the thing, is fooling around with this, I started wondering, could this be more widely useful than just pretending that something like PointyGuitar is a real guitar amp? And you could throw this on the end of, say, Pointy Deluxe. It's the more strange, radical guitar amp design. You could put this on there and lean it back away from the rather extremeness that Pointy Deluxe normally gives you. But why stop there? There are reasons that people go for high passes and low passes in the mix. You get to contain excess frequencies, and normally you do that like Console X did that with my isolator filter. Isolator filter is basically like a biquad based design, so it's more accurate. It doesn't do as much of the weird phase smearing that this more primitive filter does, but it also doesn't give you the sound of a speaker or a speaker cabinet or amplifier. Instead, it gives you the sound of like DJ equipment being manipulated. And that's all well and good. It's great fun. In fact, on Console X, you can use the high pass and low pass that live on the master bus, because the master bus contains exactly the same signal processing as everything else. You can use the ones in the master bus to do a full frequency sweep down to silence, much like Cabs2 can do. But it's not going to sound the same, because it's not going to have that weirdly speaker cabinet-like quality to it, where rather than sounding like a resonant peak, it just starts sounding limited. It just starts sounding restricted and kind of weirdly sonorous around the cutoff frequencies. And that's what I'm hoping is going to work with this, why I'm bringing it out as its own separate thing, and why I'm going to be using this when I do finish up Console X2. Because Console X2, of course, is the one where I get to use my my control surface stuff and those joysticks to do a basic EQ shaping based on Smooth EQ2. it's also going to have this in it. And I feel like it will be a new breakthrough in being able to do an Airwindows style mix that rapidly goes to interesting sonic spaces in the style that I like. So here's the next question, and this is a question. Would you rather have this in the console H that I have committed to making, or something weirder and more, I don't know, alienating, synthetic? I'm still working on ways of maybe taking like PearEQ and having that style of filtering kick in. That has a very strange overtone as you sweep it. So what I'm wondering, and here's my thoughts on the matter, I could be simply taking console H and doing everything possible so that every little control that you have twists and distorts things until they are unrecognizable. You could start with like bonking pieces of wood and random samples and twist and turn them into something that has not been heard before. And that's the main idea of console H. That could also include a high pass and low pass that are either like the isolator filters, because you hear that in hip hop music and stuff like that, is you will hear effects like that. Or what if I use this Cabs2 for the high pass and low pass of console H and put it on after everything else so that you can start by doing radical extreme things that produce extremely aggressive sounds, and then you can trap them in with like not really speaker emulation, but kind of like speaker emulation. I also think this is closer to the sound of like vintage samplers, like old samplers from back in the day, which I can't get a hold of anymore because I cannot afford that kind of thing. But if you had those, I think Cabs2 is probably closer to the sound and feel of those when you start down speeding them and doing radical things with the sample rate inside the sampler. I think it's sounding closer to that than actually going and trying to model in detail the circuitry of those very same samplers. Excuse me. I think it's actually stepping in that direction, because the deal with the work that I'm doing here, it continues to be, what can I do to get the effective things people are trying to accomplish in a direct and efficient way that'll run good on like older computers and stuff too. Like I compile my stuff for Raspberry Pi. You should be able to do these things even if you're making music on a Raspberry Pi. But I don't see that much interest in taking not detailed modeling of every little detail of some proprietary piece of hardware that you're told to want one of because somebody else used one once, versus just trying to get the vibe and doing it in the digital domain in such a way where the alterations to the sound are happening in a useful way. And that, I think, is what Cabs2 is doing in terms of, it's not a clean filter, but it's a messy filter in a useful way that might help get people's sounds more effectively. So I'm very interested in what people think about that. I mean, Cabs2 is yours now. It is open source. It's actually MIT licensed, so you can code it into things as well. But I'm very interested in whether I should be pursuing this or something more like an isolator filter or something that's more of a radical sound destroyer filter for console H, because I have a feeling this might be leaning closer to what will actually be useful for people. I'm already looking at coming up with a smooth EQ3 that's going to act more like a simple 3-band EQ that you could use very directly and simply to go, okay, here's my bass, middle, and treble. I'm going to dial something in that sounds good. More highs, here we go. Less highs, here we go. Boost the bass, there we go. That's lots of bass. Excellent. Stuff like that. I'm already working on getting a smooth EQ3 out and wondering whether it's going to be more useful in hip hop rather than just trying to simulate samplers of yesteryear, just to have those again forever. And whether it would be more useful to say, take your 808 beat or whatever and throw it into a incredible intense EQ like Smooth EQ2 or this simpler and more approachable Smooth EQ3, and then run that into Cabs2 as the high pass and low pass. Like boost all the bass, cut all the mid-range and treble, and then you've got a kick. It's coming off of an 808 sample or whatever, but you have your kick, you've got it boosted in this way. Then you use the high pass to cut it back again, but in so doing, you're also messing with the phase of it radically. And maybe that's going to come up with sounds that are both useful and novel. Because I'd like to be able to help people get novel sounds, not just better copies of sounds that people had a long time ago. Anyway, I think that's enough planning and scheming for today. So I hope you enjoy Cabs2. Today I'm going to be putting out on the Patreon for $10 and up patrons. You don't get any extra plugins because I will not withhold plugins from people who aren't chiming in that much. But I do give you something from my record collection as played through Airwindows meter so you can see how it measured. And today I'm going to see whether I can't do a Pretenders track, Middle of the Road, which is a very 80s sounding track, but that's also one of the tracks that's up in the high regions of the hit record meter. I did one measurement that was rating AA, and I'm doing a measurement that's rating AB. Either way, you can kind of see where it hits, where the frequencies go, and presumably hear how everything is balanced on this classic record that has not been remastered or anything. This is the way we heard it originally. So if you were on the Patreon to that degree, that's the extra little bonus thing. And if not, I guess you get to go play with Cabs2 all the sooner. So I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.